There are just some people in life you'll never get along with. That's a lesson I've learned. Sorry for starting off on such a strange note. My name is Nellie. I'd be glad if you could lead an ear to my story for a bit. I'm married to a man named Greg. Greg's swarmed with work and is often away in the Boston area for his job. While waiting for him to come back, I live in the house we bought together. But recently, my mother-in-law Shannon has been showing up a lot. "You could never deserve this house," she always says. You see, we live pretty close to Shannon's place. We settled here because she insisted we live near her family home. Sure enough, she started visiting frequently once we moved in. "Listen, Veronica, my other daughter-in-law, just got married and wants the house. Since you're the only one here, why not give up this place?" She said something outrageous. This is the house that Greg and I bought together. How could she ask me to give it up? "But Greg is always away, right? So what's the problem?" That's not a valid reason at all. If I give up this house, Greg won't have a home to return to. I had been firmly refusing Shannon's absurd request. Then one day, she came over with Veronica. "Oh wow, this is such a nice place. Perfect for my new home." Veronica examined the house as if she owned it. Being scrutinized like that was unnerving, to say the least. "I love this house. Hand it over now." Veronica joined in with her outrageous demands. Of course, I refused. "You dare defy me, you insolent woman!" And then Veronica got violent. "What are you doing?" Even as I said that, she didn't stop. I curled up to protect myself, enduring her attacks. Shannon was standing there, laughing. "Well, if you're going to cower like that, you shouldn't have defied me in the first place." It seemed like she didn't like the fact that I refused, but she didn't have to be this violent. They left for the day, but they said they'd be back to try and take the house again. I was scared they'd actually take the house from me. I contacted Greg, who was still away for work. When I told him what happened, he said Shannon and Veronica had reached out to him too. Apparently, Shannon has always favored Veronica over him and used to discriminate between them when they were kids. This time, too, Veronica told Greg that she wanted a house and asked him to give it to her. Greg sounded really down. I tried my best to cheer him up. We couldn't talk much because he had work left. And then, the next day, Shannon and Veronica returned. "We're getting you to hand over the house today." This time, Shannon entered the house wielding an umbrella. It wasn't raining, so why an umbrella? Then suddenly she swung it at me, clearly threatening that if I didn't give up the house, she'd beat me with it. "All right, say you'll give us the house. Veronica will be the new owner." Veronica also had an umbrella and swung it towards me, along with Shannon. I've been hit by Veronica before, so I was genuinely scared she might actually hit me and raised my arms to protect myself. Both were swinging their umbrella so hard that the whooshing sound filled the air, causing me to flinch and cover my head with my arms. The scene was so terrifying, I couldn't move for a few minutes. "Stubborn, aren't you? Even after all this, you still won't give up the house," Shannon said, sounding exasperated, but I was too scared to even speak. Their attitudes were as if they'd done nothing wrong. It was infuriating. Eventually, Shannon and Veronica left for the day. But as they left, they threatened that the next time they really might hit me. Thinking that my life could actually be in danger, I was filled with dread. I immediately called Greg and told him about today's events. Greg was concerned for my well-being and suggested that we think seriously about our next steps. And then he made a proposal to change the situation. Feeling there was no other choice, I agreed to go along with Greg's plan. During the operation, I made sure to not be home when Shannon and Veronica would come. This way, the plan went forward without them catching on. 2 months after initiating the plan, I got a call from Shannon. "I'm tired of waiting to see you. I've decided to move Veronica in whether you like it or not, and I'll throw your stuff out myself." Shannon was laughing as if she had won. Apparently, Veronica was already on her way to the house, but they knew nothing about the plan. I'm sure Veronica would be in for a surprise. While talking to Shannon, a call from Veronica came in. Putting Shannon on hold, I answered Veronica's call and heard, "Who are you?"
"I'm the homeowner. Who are you?"
"This is my house," a male voice responded. Realizing the call had connected, Veronica started speaking to me.
"Nellie, what's going on? Why is there some stranger in the house instead of you?"
Veronica sounded confused. I decided to explain the situation to her. "Veronica, actually we sold the house. Greg and I decided it was the best move." Hearing this, Veronica let out a loud,
"What?"
I wish she wouldn't yell. It's a disturbance to the new homeowner.
"Why would you do that? I never heard about this."
"Well, if we had told you, you would have stopped us, right?" I didn't say anything, so it was a strategy. Greg was also quite upset with Shannon and Veronica's actions. Most of what Greg owned had been taken by Veronica, and now they were trying to take the house too. This was the final straw. Fortunately, we had received some financial support from my family when purchasing the house, so we had little to no mortgage left and could sell it outright.
"This isn't funny. I really like this house. What am I supposed to do now?"
Veronica was furious. Apparently, they'd already planned to live here, and she had even terminated the lease on the apartment she and her husband Ricky were living in. Now, they can't live in this house, and Veronica's faces homelessness. "Why not go back to your parents' house?" I asked, genuinely puzzled, and Veronica became enraged.
"Ricky absolutely refuses to live with them."
Shannon must really have it in for Ricky, judging by what's been said. Well, if someone is that obnoxious, it's no wonder they're disliked. Veronica wouldn't stop complaining about how she absolutely needs that house. But the house is already sold and the new owners have moved in. What does she expect us to do? Over the phone, I could hear a man's angry voice. Apparently, there's a bunch of stuff sprawled out near the entrance, and he's not too happy about it. At this point, I wouldn't blame him if he called the cops.
"Hey, do something about this. You're the one who sold them the house, right?"
Veronica, not wanting to be yelled at, tried to make me and the man talk over the phone. "Yes, I did sell them the house, but that doesn't mean we have anything to discuss. Even if we did, the contract has been finalized, so all I can say is, I'm sorry for any inconvenience my acquaintance has caused." I decide to decline Veronica's request. Then, Veronica starts yelling again. Causing a ruckus in front of the house is bothering not just the man, but all the neighbors too. Talking to Veronica is pointless. She just doesn't get it. I thought this was going nowhere and hung up on Veronica. Immediately, another call comes in. It's from Shannon, whom I had put on hold. "What on earth are you doing? Veronica is furious. Fix this!" I'm just dumbfounded by her blame shifting. Shannon is the one who tried to let Veronica move into our house without permission. But she acts like I'm the villain. If it weren't for these two making a scene, I would have continued to live in that house. "Where are you now? Just fix it!" Oh, I hadn't told her yet. I'm at Greg's new posting. What? I decided to move with Greg to his new location. Greg frequently gets transferred because of his work, and we thought it would be better to not settle down in one place. Luckily, we don't have kids, so we have the freedom to change our residence. But that didn't satisfy Shannon. "Come back right now. I need to give both of you a piece of my mind." Shannon sounded furious, but I'm the one who wants to be mad. If it weren't for Shannon's meddling, we wouldn't have had to give up the house. "Enough, Shannon. How much more inconvenience do you plan on causing people?" I figured it's safe to vent, given that I've moved and we're over the phone. "I wonder if you ever think about how much stress you've caused us. Don't bother us anymore." Hearing my resistance must have really infuriated Shannon. She was screaming so loudly over the phone, it was hard to understand what she was saying. It made me worry if she was taking her anger too far. "I can't believe this! How dare you talk back to me like that? Greg, you too! How dare you defy your older sister, even though you're just Veronica's little brother?" It seemed Shannon had traveled all the way to Boston suburbs just to take revenge on us. But she didn't know where we lived. "Hey, tell me where you live!" There's no way I'd comply with such a demand. I naturally refused. Then Shannon screamed again. It was almost funny. She was like a machine programmed to scream every time I defied her. "Enough is enough! I'm Greg's mother. Since when is it okay for a child and his wife to defy their parents?" She was pulling some pretty old-fashioned cards. I mean, there are countless ways to find out where someone lives. Given she hasn't thought to look it up, I doubt she'd ever manage to reach our home. "Give me your address! Neither of you is getting off easy!" "Wait, what?" Suddenly, Shannon's tone changed. I wondered what had happened when she started screaming. "This is all your fault!" Turns out, Veronica had been taken away by the police, aggressively demanding a man leave his home, and he finally had enough and called the police. Well, that figures. Unable to think rationally, believing that blackmail could solve her problems, she must have gotten it from her mother. Getting taken away by the police might cool her off a bit. "How dare you do this to my precious Veronica?" Once again, she's deflecting the blame. I mean, how can it be anyone's fault but Veronica's, who was causing a scene outside someone else's house? Just then, Greg got home from work. I informed him that I was on the phone with Shannon, and he took over the call. "Mom, I've lived my whole life in fear of you, but that's over now. I'm not listening to you anymore. If you come to our house uninvited, I'll call the police." It seems Greg has grown through this experience. To think he could say that much to Shannon, who had tormented him all this time. Greg gave the phone back to me, saying he had said all he needed to say. Shannon, on the other end, screamed again. She's clearly not used to getting pushed back. Doesn't she realize that doing awful things could result in some form of retaliation? "Shannon, just give it up. Veronica has been taken away, and anything you do to me is just going to be petty revenge." Even so, Shannon just kept screaming. She was like a wild animal, so lost in her anger she had forgotten what she was even mad about. This is getting nowhere. Shannon, can I hang up now? I don't think there's any point in continuing this conversation." But she just wouldn't listen. "Don't you dare argue with me! Parents are absolute! A child should never defy their parents!" If she's going to be this unreasonable, well, I've got my own thoughts on the matter too. "Shannon, I've said it before and I'll say it again. We're done interacting with you. Stop contacting us." I deliberately kept pushing Shannon's buttons. As expected, Shannon flew off the handle and started cursing at me. The things she said were so awful, they could break someone's spirit if taken to heart. But that's precisely what I was aiming for. "Shannon, I've recorded every single abusive word you've just said." As I said this, Shannon stopped her tirade and began to panic. "Recorded? What are you doing?" "Shannon, you're the one in the wrong for using hate speech. Slander is a serious offense. I'm sure my lawyer would love to hear this, and you'll probably end up having to pay a fine or compensation." At that point, Shannon broke down in tears and apologized. "I'm sorry. I just lost my cool for a moment. Please don't involve the lawyers or police, okay?" Since Shannon kept apologizing persistently, I told her to never interfere with Greg and me again, and decided to forgive her. Shannon promised, and we never heard from her again. The truth is, I hadn't actually recorded anything. It was all a tactic to make Shannon back off. She didn't even know how to find our address, so I thought she might fall for a simple trick like this. And she did. Finally, peace returned to Greg's and my life. I heard that after being taken by the police, Veronica had to pay damages to the tenants. Having lost their home, Veronica and her husband Ricky moved in with Shannon. But within a few days, Ricky was talking about divorce, and it seemed Veronica was going to be divorced. To top it all off, Shannon had been hurling insults at Veronica's Ricky too. And I heard she also ended up having to pay damages for her insults. Both Shannon and Veronica ran out of money, and what used to be a friendship turned into mutual loathing. The atmosphere in their home is reportedly constantly tense now. Well, they brought it upon themselves. I hope they come to accept the circumstances and move on. As for Greg, he completed his assignment and returned to the main office, only to be assigned to another distant location a few months later. We realized it's more convenient for us both to relocate together, given how our lives have become increasingly busy with transfers. Now, wherever we go, people say we're a great couple, not just at the company, but also among the locals in the places we move to. After overcoming challenges without giving in to Shannon and Veronica, we realized that we'll be fine wherever we go. We look forward to supporting each other as we move forward in life.
My name is Mrs. Natalie Watson, and I'm 29 years old. I live in a small apartment with my husband. We've been married for 3 years and generally get along well. I say generally because I've become unhappy with my husband over the past few years. To be more precise, it's not just my husband, but also his parents. My husband and his parents have a great relationship, and we visit their house about once a week. At first, when I was taken to my in-laws' house, I thought, he's such a filial person. However, every time I went to their house, my in-laws repeatedly said, "Natalie, when will you quit your job? A woman's job is to take care of the home." Gradually, I started to dislike going to their house. I enjoy my current job and want to keep working as long as I can. I told my husband this before we got married. Even when his parents blame me, my husband doesn't even make eye contact, acting as if it doesn't concern him. I started to dread going to my in-laws' house, and there are times when I told my husband, "Why don't you just go by yourself?" However, my husband would say, "My parents want to see you too," and force me to go with him. Eventually, I gave up trying to convince him otherwise. However, I couldn't bring myself to say this to his parents, as it might hurt my husband's feelings. But I couldn't bring myself to tell his parents that, as it might hurt my husband's feelings. In the end, all I could do was smile and brush off their comments each time. While I disliked my husband's indifferent attitude, what I hated most was being asked by his parents, "When will you have a child?" I, myself, like kids and thought it would be nice to have one. However, you can't force a child to be born, and it's not something that can be easily done just by wanting it. First of all, I couldn't understand the idea of having a child just for his parents' sake. Honestly, I wanted them to leave me alone. I talked to my husband about this issue as well, but he just said, "Don't worry about it, they're just concerned," and didn't do anything. As my frustration built up due to my husband's attitude, and the fact that I had to endure this situation alone, my mother-in-law said something I couldn't bear. She asked, "Are you infertile since you still haven't had a child?" On top of that, my father-in-law looked at me as if I were a criminal, saying, "Did you keep your infertility a secret and marry our son?" I couldn't stand it anymore. Until now, I had endured and overcome anything they had said with a smile. But I stopped smiling and said to them, "I'll undergo infertility treatment. In return, can you promise not to bring this up again?" I was surprised by my own words, but I realized how stressed I had been. Suddenly, my previously silent husband spoke up. "I don't think we need fertility treatments. We're still young. There's no need to force ourselves to have a child. Fertility treatments cost money, and I want to cherish our time as a couple," he said firmly to his parents. At that time, I interpreted my husband's words to suit my convenience, and believed that he was thinking of me when he said that. On a certain weekday, I took paid leave and headed to the gynecologist. The concern of being nagged by his parents about having a child had decreased, but I wanted to be sure if I was really infertile. At first, I thought of asking my husband, but he became moody whenever I tried to talk about infertility treatments, so I decided to take the exam by myself. The examination finished quicker than I thought, and I scheduled an appointment for the results a week later. On my way out, I happened to meet eyes with a pregnant woman in the waiting room. I recognized her face and stopped in my tracks. She seemed to notice me right away and approached me. "Are you, by any chance, Natalie? Could it be Claire?" When we called each other's names, she nodded, confirming that she was indeed my classmate from elementary and middle school. Claire's belly was quite big, and she was 9 months pregnant. She had just finished her regular checkup, so I decided to visit her house while walking her home. Claire's house was close to mine, and I was surprised by that. But I was even more surprised to learn that her husband and my husband worked at the same company. Catching up on our current lives and chatting about our school days, my eyes were naturally drawn to Claire's belly. Noticing my stare, she asked, "Do you want to touch it?" "Is it okay?" I asked back, and she replied, "Of course." I gently touched Claire's belly. In my memory, Claire had a great figure with a slim waist, but now her body had grown so much. I was filled with amazement and the wonder that there really was a baby inside her. After keeping my hand on her belly for a while, I felt a faint movement when I tried to pull away. Surprised, I looked up at Claire. "Did it just—" "Yeah, it started moving recently." "That's amazing." "Yeah." Claire, who happily stroked her belly, already had the face of a mother. Before I knew it, I found myself saying, "I'm envious." I made a face as if I'd said something I shouldn't have, and quickly looked away from Claire. Claire, sensitive to people's emotions, seemed to have noticed enough and asked, "If I'm misunderstanding, I apologize, but did something happen?" I hesitated to talk about it, but I thought I couldn't deceive Claire's eyes, so I told her about the situation with my in-laws and children. Once I started talking, I couldn't stop, and I ended up telling her everything, including the fertility test I had taken at the clinic today. I thought maybe I'd said too much, but a strange sense of trust prevailed, making me believe it was okay to talk to Claire about it. Above all, I think I wanted someone to hear my pent-up frustrations from the past few years. While I talked, Claire just nodded and listened quietly. After I finished talking, Claire said, "You've been holding back for so long. You endured it well. If it were me, I couldn't have held back and would have cut ties with my in-laws." "Yeah, I just realized it now, but but it seems I've been under a lot of stress. I feel a bit relieved after talking to you, Claire. At least my husband stood by my side, which was a small consolation. I said that with a light laugh, but Claire's expression remained tense. I was perplexed because I didn't know why Claire was making such a face, so I called her name. Then, she hesitated for a moment before reluctantly opening her mouth to speak. It's about your husband. Anyway, it might be better not to tell him about the test for now, Claire said with hesitation. Huh? I blinked at Claire's unexpected words. Curious about why Claire said those words, I asked her directly. Then, Claire started to tell me something astonishing. I couldn't digest what she said, and I somehow made it home with unsteady steps. Ever since I got home, I had been sitting on the sofa, pondering over what Claire had told me. I didn't want to believe it, but I also couldn't imagine Claire lying about something like that. Moreover, I had been feeling doubtful about my husband's behavior. If what Claire said was true, I couldn't forgive him. I made up my mind and decided to find out the truth. My husband and I were visiting my in-laws after a long time. As my husband and in-laws were eating tea and snacks, my mother-in-law suddenly asked, So, when will you quit your job, Natalie? Until now, I would have replied, I don't have plans to quit yet, but this time was different. I suppose I'll quit when we have a child, I replied. Hearing that, my mother-in-law blinked and said, Well, you finally decided to have a child. My father-in-law also excitedly said, Ooh, will I finally get to hold a grandchild? But my husband, after glancing at my face for a moment, made a don't say unnecessary things expression and said, Well, having a child is a blessing, so we don't know if it'll happen right away. As expected, my husband reacted the way I thought he would. I glanced at him and said, Actually, I went to the gynecologist the other day and showed him the results of my infertility test. It stated that there were no issues. I spoke to my husband before he could say anything. I'm starting to want a child, too. You'll cooperate for the sake of your parents, right? My husband looked back and forth between the test results and my face, then turned bright red and yelled, I'm not taking any infertility treatments. I won't get tested either. His parents were shocked by his sudden change, but I understood that what Claire had said was true and felt disappointed. Hey, do you know Mr. Howard? When I asked, my husband looked surprised, wondering how I knew. I decided to tell him without waiting for his response. His wife is my friend. Apparently, you've been saying things at work like, my wife is a defective product who can't have children due to infertility. She's abandoned being a woman and only focuses on work. And I'm so pitiful to have married such a wife. As I looked at him with a cold gaze I had never directed at him before, his mouth trembled and he became defensive. So what if it's true? Who else would want someone like you? Watching my furious husband, I felt my feelings for him cooling down. Rather, I started to wonder what I ever saw in a man like this. Calmly, I pointed at the test results on the table and said, I just proved there's no problem with me, right? While my husband stayed silent, I brought up something that had been bothering me in the back of my mind. Could it be that you're the one with issues? Is that why you've been stubbornly refusing infertility treatments and testing? That's when my mother-in-law, who had been silent, chimed in. There's no way that's true. There's no way there's a problem with my son. If there's a problem, it's with you. With her face turning red, she grabbed the test results on the table and said, These must be fake, and tore them up. My husband looked surprised at his mother's actions, but then he agreed. Yeah, that's right. There's no way I have a problem. He and his parents started to blame me. Realizing there was no point in continuing the conversation, I slammed the prepared divorce papers on the table. Then please divorce me. And why don't you find a much better wife than someone like me? With that, My husband said, "Yeah, that's right. I'll find a much better wife than you," and angrily filled out the divorce papers. His parents didn't try to stop him. As I emotionlessly watched the divorce papers being filled out, I felt a sense of joy at severing ties with the 3 people in front of me. Once he finished, I quickly snatched the papers, said, "Well then, goodbye," and hurried out of my in-laws' house. I thought I heard a voice behind me, but it must have been my imagination. I headed straight to the city hall and quickly submitted the divorce papers. A few days later, I quickly moved out of the apartment we had been living in together and moved into my company dormitory. Since I was the only one who had signed the lease for the apartment and had already prepared for this day, the move went smoothly. By the way, I packed my husband's belongings in cardboard boxes and sent them to his parents' house with cash on delivery. When I started getting used to life in the company dormitory, I got a call from my ex-husband. Wondering what he wanted now, I answered the phone only to be yelled at right away. "Why did you submit the divorce papers? Why did you move out of the apartment?" I really want to ask why he was bringing this up now. I explained calmly, "Don't say things that don't make sense. You agreed and filled out the divorce papers, right? And as for the apartment, I was the one who originally signed the lease. And since we're divorced, I moved out because it's no longer necessary." However, my ex-husband didn't listen to me. "Take back the divorce. No, let's go submit new marriage papers. Where are you living now? Let's live together again." He continued to say even more disjointed things. I couldn't take it anymore, so I said, "Okay, I'm hanging up now. Don't ever call me again." I tried to end the call, but my ex-husband threatened, "If you don't tell me where you're living, I'll go to your company." I was fed up and just told him, "You're the one who'll be in trouble if you cause any problems," and hung up on the phone. Nevertheless, I couldn't be sure that he wouldn't come to the company, so I talked to my boss about my ex-husband just in case. Neither my boss nor I thought he would actually do anything, but he ended up causing a scene. I learned from the security guard that he went wild in the company lobby, and the police had to be called in the end. I was full of shame and guilt, but my coworker sympathized with me and told me that breaking up with him was the right decision. Later, I heard from Claire's husband that my ex-husband had panicked when the police incident became known to his company and tried to make me the villain. However, Claire's husband corrected the story, and the lies my ex-husband had been telling about me were exposed. It seems he found it difficult to stay at the company and quit. Most likely, my jobless ex-husband is now back at his parents' house, crying to them. Honestly, even though it might be a case of you reap what you sow, I think it would be tough to support a son who has become unemployed and divorced. Well, it doesn't really matter to me anymore, since he is a stranger now. Since then, I've been free from unnecessary stress and spending my days focused on work. I have more time and money to spend freely, so I occasionally visit Claire to check on her, and we make plans to spoil her baby. She sometimes finds this amusing and shakes her head at me. As for getting remarried myself, I don't have the luxury to think about it just yet, but I do hope that someday I can have a happy family of my own.
It's just a cold, right? You'll be fine if you sleep it off, haha.
I couldn't believe what my husband just said. He was planning to leave me running a high fever and our young daughter to attend a friend's wedding overseas, and off he went, genuinely excited about his trip. But little did he know, a surprising twist awaited him. I am Allison, a 35-year-old stay-at-home mom. I live with my husband David and our 5-year-old daughter, Misty. Misty loves reading picture books. She's a sweet, kind-hearted girl who laughs a lot, my pride and joy. David has many friends and is well-versed in various hobbies. His stories were always entertaining. He was the man I was proud to be with. I believed that marrying someone as wonderful as David would lead to a happy marriage, and it was blissful in the beginning. Our newlywed life was sweet and we were blessed with a child fairly quickly. I quit my job when I got pregnant, as per David's request. I gave birth to Misty without any issues. That's when things changed. He changed drastically. After the birth, David started calling me fat because I couldn't lose the baby weight. He would say,
"You're not attractive anymore. Make an effort to lose some weight."
Struggling with first-time parenting, I was also criticized for not keeping up with household chores. I did ask David for help, but he yelled,
"Don't be lazy. You eat, but can't even handle chores or childcare? Unbelievable."
David seemed to resent that his time was being consumed by household duties and childcare. I was shocked to discover this selfish side of him, especially after he was so happy about the pregnancy. If I ever asked David for help, he would complain to neighbors and relatives that I was neglecting my duties, making me feel ashamed. I became hesitant to confront David. I was afraid he would spread more false stories about me. But the biggest issue was money. When it was just the two of us, we both contributed to a joint account and spent the rest freely. After Misty was born, David took over the finances since I had no income, but he hardly gave any money for living expenses. He once told me to manage on just $300 for the three of us. Stress, I couldn't produce enough breast milk, so Misty was on formula. Between formula and diapers, $300 was nowhere near enough. When I tried to save by cooking budget meals, David would get furious, saying,
"Don't serve me this cheap-smelling food."
I even suggested getting a job to help out, but David looked down on me, saying,
"You can't even handle housework, let alone work and raise a child. You're planning to slack off and make me do everything, aren't you? Just manage with the money I give you."
David was absolutely against me working, perhaps fearing it would add to his household responsibilities. Now that Misty is 5, David seems to have lost interest in her. He often ignores her when she tries to talk to him, preferring to play with his phone instead. I thought marrying David would lead to a happy family, but I was completely wrong. Seeing Misty downcast because David ignores her and won't play with her breaks my heart. Then one day I discovered that David had used the money we had been saving for Misty's education. I'm not working, and I think we are barely making ends meet each month. David is supposed to be managing our finances, but he won't tell me how much we are saving. Maybe we are not saving at all and running a deficit each month? That might be why he dipped into the education fund. When I asked David about it, he refused to disclose what he had spent the money on. Finally, he snapped,
"I earned this money now, so how I spend it is my business. You and Misty eat because of me, so stop complaining."
I tried to discuss the money issue multiple times, but David wouldn't budge. Our conversations went nowhere. Then David dropped a bombshell.
"A friend invited me to their wedding overseas."
I couldn't believe my ears. Even if his friends covered some travel expenses, going overseas would still cost a fair amount. We are in a situation where we can't even afford Misty's education, and how can we afford an overseas trip? I tried to discuss this, but David ignored me and started preparing for the trip. Honestly, I considered divorce, but thinking of Misty held me back. She only has one father, and I couldn't bring myself to take that away from her. The day before David's departure arrived, and I was stuck with a high fever. I hadn't had a fever in a long time, and this might be the first time as an adult. Headaches, nausea, dizziness, and body aches clouded my consciousness. "Can you please skip the wedding? I'm really struggling with this fever," I asked weakly. David laughed and said,
"You'll be fine if you sleep it off."
He even added,
"Stop being so needy. Handle it yourself. You can't even manage yourself, and you are not even working."
"Could you at least get some food for Misty? She hasn't eaten properly since yesterday," I pleaded. David sighed heavily and said,
"I don't have time for that, and I don't want to catch anything. I'm staying in the hotel tonight."
And he really did leave us to attend the overseas wedding. At that moment, suffering from a high fever, I made up my mind. For Misty's sake, I had to let go of such a selfish man like David. 5 days later, David returned in high spirits.
"I'm back. Why are Dad and Mom here?"
David's parents are in the living room. My parents-in-law don't answer.
"What's going on? Where's Allison?"
It was Misty who answered David's question. "Mom is in heaven now."
What? What are you talking about?"
David, thinking Misty was joking, burst into laughter. His parents shook their heads in disbelief.
What a foolish thing you've done.
It's too late for anything now. David looked bewildered, not understanding the meaning of their words.
Wait, did Allison really die from that high fever?
Muttering this, David watched as his parents left the house with Misty. Misty waved at her father. Bye-bye. David, as usual, ignored her. His parents had got in the car. That was the plan. My parents and I were quietly waiting in the kids' room. I had my phone connected to my in-laws and was watching the living room through a hidden camera on my computer. My sister, who was waiting nearby, would pick up Misty, since there were things we didn't want her to hear. Only my in-laws remained in the car. While David was overseas, I had told both sets of parents about his terrible behavior. I wanted to divorce David, but I knew he would refuse to pay alimony or child support, so I wanted them to know the truth to help with the divorce. I told Misty she might not see David again, and because she said she wanted to see him one last time, I had the in-laws stay in the living room. Misty didn't object to not seeing her father again. She might have understood, even at her young age, that her father was treating her poorly. I had to prioritize Misty's care from now on. I wondered how David would react to Misty's words that Mom is in heaven. Would he reflect on his actions or apologize in tears? I continued to watch the hidden camera in silence, but then David did something unexpected. He suddenly started making a phone call. His voice was elated.
Brianna, I don't know the details yet, but it seems my wife is dead. Finally, the obstacle is gone. I should get the insurance money. Let the old folks raise Misty. Let's live together. You're the only one I love, Brianna.
We realized then that David had been having an affair, and he considered me and our child obstacles, planning to use the insurance money to remarry this woman. My parents, who were watching the hidden camera footage with me, were also furious. Since I was on the phone with my in-laws, they had heard David's voice too. They were also angry at David. I signaled to my parents and my in-laws, and we all moved to the living room where David was. Seeing this, David hung up the phone in shock.
Wait, Allison, but I thought you were in heaven.
I couldn't help but laugh at David's stupidity. Heaven is what Misty calls her room. It was sky blue sheets and white pillows. You wouldn't know because you never talked to her.
Wait, is that so? I thought... No, never mind.
David, not realizing we had heard his phone call, tried to cover up his tracks. But it was too late. Stop making excuses. We have been watching you on a hidden camera. You left your family with high fevers to go to a wedding, and you have been having an affair?
No, that's not true. I haven't been...
I cut him off. No more excuses. The decision is made. We are getting a divorce, and I'll be seeking alimony and child support, so be prepared. After I spoke, my father-in-law yelled, his face red with anger.
If you get divorced, never show your face here again. You're no longer our son.
Right after that, David's cell phone rang, filling the room with his ringtone. David didn't move, so I grabbed his phone to check. The caller was Brianna, David's mistress. I answered the call and put it on speaker so everyone could hear. Hello? What was that call about earlier? Living together is a joke, right? I have a fiancé, so stop getting the wrong idea. I can't be with a delusional man. Don't contact me again. With that, she hung up. David, now dumped by his mistress too, turned pale and groveled at my feet, begging for forgiveness.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me. If my family disowns me, you're the only one I can rely on. Plus, I can't afford to pay alimony or anything like that. I've already spent so much on Brianna during this trip.
David started rambling, even though no one asked him to explain. I glared at him. So you didn't go to a wedding? You abandoned your family for a romantic getaway?
Well, you see.
David couldn't find the words to defend himself. To think he was foolish enough to abandon his family and ruin himself by confessing an affair? I wondered why I ever married such an idiot. I should have decided to divorce him much sooner. Watching David continue to make a fool of himself, I resolved to move on with my life. just Misty and me. Later, I checked David's phone and found numerous photos and videos from his trip with his mistress. The story about attending a friend's wedding was clearly a lie. I took this evidence to a lawyer. I formally filed for divorce, seeking compensation and child support. The lawyer visited Brianna, who apparently works at a nightclub, to verify the amount David had spent on her. She claimed she was just entertaining an old man as part of her job, but David foolishly insisted they were in love, causing a big fuss. It became clear that David had been financially supporting Brianna. That's probably why he had been giving me so little for living expenses and even dipping into Misty's college fund. David's life became miserable, burdened with debt from his lavish spending and now additional compensation. It also turned out that he lost his standing at his company when his affair and romantic trips came to light. Apparently, the nightclub where Brianna works is a popular spot for David's colleagues, so David confronted Brianna, causing a scene. Some of David's co-workers were there and word of the affair spread throughout the company. I guess he confronted her because he didn't know she was engaged, but I can't be sure. It's pathetic how he let a young woman manipulate him. This incident led to David becoming isolated at work. He really is a hopeless case. I heard David got demoted and took a significant pay cut. The lawyer who helped me with the divorce and alimony also updated me on Brianna's situation. It seems she met a grim end too. Her fiancé, a regular at the club, found out about her affair with David and called off their engagement. He even demanded compensation for the wedding expenses they had already incurred. Struggling to pay the hefty sum, Brianna tried to swindle money from other customers, but of course, you can't keep something like that a secret. As expected, the club found out and fired her. Now, Brianna is working multiple part-time jobs to pay off her debts, living alone in a cramped apartment. As for me, I moved back home and am living with my parents and Misty. I'm relieved to be away from the neighbors who believed the rumors and lies David spread about me. Life is much more relaxed now. My parents dote on Misty, who seems happier than when she lived with David. David has come to my parents' house a few times, begging for another chance, but my dad has been turning him away. Neither Misty nor I have any desire to see him. If Misty ever says she wants to see him, I'll consider it, but for now, she doesn't want to meet her father. I have no intention of reconciling with David, so there's no reason to talk to him. If he becomes too persistent, I'm considering involving the police. Looking at where David and his mistress Brianna are now, I realize how scary affairs can be. They have lost everything and are forced to live a bottom-tier life. It's their own fault. From now on, I want to focus on cherishing the happiness I have with my parents and Misty and forget about David.
You just stay home all day, right? Tired from just cleaning? Why don't you try switching places with me and see the real struggle? Maybe I should divorce such a useless wife.
Ugh, not this again. The way my husband treats me, a homemaker, is truly exhausting. My name is Jennifer. I'm a 34-year-old woman. I married David, my coworker, 2 years ago after a workplace romance. Back then, I planned to continue working after marriage. But David said,
I'll work hard outside. You take care of the home. That's my ideal. Men work outside, women protect the home.
I naively agreed. I quit my job to become a full-time homemaker, influenced by David's perspective. I used to be easily swayed by others' opinions. Above all, I deeply loved David. So, I followed whatever he said without questioning. I guess I was blinded by love. If only I had stood my ground and not quit my job. maybe things wouldn't have turned out this way. That's what I still believe. People think homemakers just laze around at home all day. But in reality, it's not like that. Cleaning, laundry, neighborhood meetings, they all consume more time than one might think. Doing all these tasks daily by myself is honestly tough. Employees get weekends off, but homemakers don't. So, on Sundays when David's home, I'd ask, "Hey, I'm a bit busy. Could you help clean the bathroom?" But he'd instantly get grumpy.
Seriously? I work every day to provide, and now you want me to work at home too? Who do you think provides the meals?
If I dared to say, "I appreciate your hard work during the week, but we're a team, right? Can't you help out a bit on your days off?" David would snap back.
Stop bossing me around. You think you can survive on your own, just being a homemaker? Want a divorce?
David immediately snapped.
Who do you think you are? Just because you're home all day doesn't mean you can boss me around. Want me to divorce you? Think you, just a housewife, can survive on your own?
Shockingly, he threatened divorce. I was at a loss for words. Maybe I shouldn't have reacted the way I did. From then on, every time I said something, David would end with,
"If you don't like it, let's divorce."
It felt like he was using that phrase to control me. Even though I used to work, I had retired and become a housewife. The idea of divorce that David kept bringing up was terrifying. If he really divorced me, how would I survive? What about income? Where would I live? For me, a housewife, nothing was scarier than the thought of divorce. What scared me the most was David himself. He used to be so kind. How did he change so much after we got married? Did I make a mistake in judging him? I deeply regretted marrying David. Lately, as soon as David comes home, he'd say,
"Isn't it obvious you should greet me at the door when I, the breadwinner, come home? Who do you think pays for everything here?"
Yes, David earns the money, but I take care of everything at home. We're supposed to be partners, not in a master-servant relationship. It's supposed to be an equal relationship. Yet, David seems to believe he's superior. He looks down on me, thinking he's above. At first, I thought maybe he was venting work frustrations on me. So I kept quiet. But over time, David began to act like he was always right. And every day was like this. After his lecture, David carelessly throws his suit all over the place and changes into casual clothes. I pick them up and toss them into the washing machine. This is a daily routine. Even after eating the dinner I prepared, he complains.
"Is this all you can cook? I work hard for you. And this is the meal I come home to? Where's your gratitude?"
I've grown tired of dealing with David's constant complaints. Despite David not earning a high salary, I manage our finances, saving for our future children, leaving little room for extra expenses. Still, I always try to prepare healthy meals, using nutritious ingredients and cutting down on salt. Yet, he still finds reasons to complain. I felt like everything I did was being negated, and my self-confidence dwindled day by day. On top of that, he demands $500 a month for his personal expenses. If I gave him that much, our finances would be in the red. At first, I used some of my savings to cover the expenses, but that wasn't sustainable. So, I tapped into my connections and started a remote job that I could do from home. Of course, I didn't tell David. You see, a while back I had mentioned, "Hey, things are a bit tight with our finances. I was thinking of getting a part-time job. Is that okay?" To which he snapped.
What? Are you saying I don't earn enough? You probably just want extra cash to splurge, right? You should just stick to taking care of the house.
Knowing David, I was sure that if I earned, he'd just take more for his personal expenses. So, I decided to work remotely without telling David. The money I earned went towards our living expenses and savings for the future. A former colleague introduced me to his remote job. I would log into the company system and handle administrative tasks, mainly settling travel expenses claimed by employees. Having experience from my previous job, the work wasn't challenging. More than that, being home all day, this remote job gave me a sense of purpose. It felt rewarding. Then, one day, after juggling remote work and household chores, I was exhausted. I decided to take a short break and lay down on the sofa. That was a mistake. I unintentionally fell asleep and was awakened by David in the evening. It was already night. Of course, dinner wasn't ready, and neither was the bathroom. David, seeing this, sighed and said,
What were you doing all day? Lounging around? Neglecting the house? I come home and you're just napping on the sofa. Seriously, homemakers are just leeches.
Usually I wouldn't react to David's words, but that day I was tired, so I snapped back.
What's your problem? I just happened to fall asleep today. Stop making it sound like I do nothing all day.
David, not expecting a retort, turned red with anger.
You're defying me? I'm the head of this household. How dare you speak to me in that tone? If you're going to be defiant, leave this house. Well, maybe I will. I've been waiting to take some time for myself anyway.
It was a classic case of tit for tat. I quickly packed some essentials and headed to a nearby hotel. The look of shock on David's face as I left was priceless. He probably never imagined I'd actually leave. In the past, I would have just been bewildered if David told me to leave. But now, things were different. After all, I had my remote job as a source of income. Being confined to the house and only doing household chores, this job became my only connection to the outside world. The feeling of being appreciated and thanked directly for my work. Seeing my efforts being rewarded with a paycheck. Having never received gratitude from David for all the housework, this job had become a significant part of my life. Thanks to my remote job, I gained confidence and strength. Maybe some time apart would be good for both of us. With that thought, I lived in the hotel for about a week. During that time, I continued my remote work from the hotel and even uncovered some fraudulent activities by an employee. Then, one day, my phone rang. It was David. I was thinking it might be time for me to return home, so I hoped this call would be the perfect opportunity. When I answered, David said,
Hey, isn't it about time you came back? You've had some time to reflect, right?
"Who does he think needs to reflect here?" Even as I was at loss for words, David continued,
You must be missing me, right? Life must be tough without me. If you apologize, I'll let you come back home.
Such arrogance from him. Who does he think he is? So I decided to play it humble and said, "I'm really sorry. It was my fault. I miss you every day. Please let me come back home." To my surprise, he responded with such relief.
I knew it. You can't handle life without me. Fine, come back home.
He couldn't even see through my act. I was taken aback, but decided to return home with an innocent face. When I got back, the house was a complete mess. Clothes were scattered all over the floor, with no place to step. Trash overflowed from the bin, giving off a foul smell. Dirty dishes piled up in the sink. In just a week, he managed to turn the place upside down. I was almost impressed. I thought maybe he'd have cooled off in my absence. Maybe he'd have taken care of the house. All my maybes were shattered. He probably called me back because he couldn't handle the mess anymore. Not because he missed me or felt sorry. Realizing this, I was disappointed in David. I couldn't believe it had come to this. I was once again disappointed by David's carelessness. But in a way, I was grateful, because it gave me the push I needed to do what I had planned for David without any hesitation. For about a month, I acted as if nothing was wrong at home. I cleaned up the mess David made and followed his every command, even when he complained. Then, the day of reckoning came. I executed the plan I had prepared and waited for David to come home. I didn't prepare dinner or even the bathroom. When David came home, he was angry that I hadn't greeted him at the door or prepared dinner. I simply apologized. "I'm sorry, I was so busy today and couldn't get to it." Feeling empowered by my submissive attitude, David lashed out even more than usual, and then he said those words.
You're just a parasite, you know. You can't earn money and can't even manage the house properly. I wonder what would happen to a woman like you if we divorced. Maybe I should just file for divorce, huh?
I had been waiting for him to say that. The word divorce that David flaunted like a badge of honor. With a smile, I replied, "You don't need to file. I've already prepared the divorce papers." David looked confused, so I showed him the actual divorce papers, already signed by me. "All you need to do is sign." David started to panic. Of course, he never expected me to agree to a divorce.
What? No. You'd be the one in trouble if we divorced, right?
"Don't worry. I'll be just fine. Haven't you noticed? Look around the house. Don't you see?" David looked around frantically.
Where's the TV? The fridge is gone too. What's going on?
"Oh, did you forget? I brought the TV and the fridge when we moved in. So it's only natural that I take them with me when we divorce. I had everything I bought removed by professionals.
Wait, you can't divorce me. How will you survive without my income?
See, I sighed. Don't you get it? The person handling expense claims at your company, that's me. We never met face to face, only communicated through chat or email. So you never realized. Yes, I was working remotely for my former workplace, which is David's company. The old acquaintance I mentioned was a colleague from that company. I had been hired part-time on the condition of remote work. I used my maiden name as my family name and kept my first name. At first, I thought David might find out. But that was needless worry. For me, David had long forgotten my maiden name. I'll tell you one last thing. Your expense claims were clearly off compared to others. So I looked into it. I've already reported the results to our boss. The employee misconduct I discovered while at the hotel was none other than David. While handling David's expense reports, I found several suspicious claims. Claims for travel expenses, for supposed business trips and hotel stays. But as his wife, I knew David was home on those days. David was trying to embezzle money by claiming fake business trips. He probably thought he'd gotten away with it. But as his wife, it was clear to me he hadn't actually gone on those trips. So I cross-referenced his past claims with his actions on those days and investigated all his fraudulent claims. At first, I wondered if I could somehow brush it under the rug, but after a week in the hotel and hearing David's words over the phone and seeing the state of our home, I made up my mind. I'd be the one to end things with this man. I've already reported it to our boss, and I've asked for appropriate action to be taken. Tomorrow, when David goes to work, he'll be called into the boss's office and questioned severely. He was misusing company money after all. It's only right. Thank you for everything. I'll be happy on my own. Goodbye. My belongings have already been shipped to my new place. All that's left is for me to leave this house. Leaving a stunned David behind, I walked out of the house with a spring in my step. Later on, David was dismissed from the company. Being dismissed makes it hard to find another job, and it seems David is still unemployed and attending a job support center. Of course, the house is reportedly a mess. David was reluctant to sign the divorce papers and kept asking me to come back, but I had no intention of doing so. I left all the procedures to my lawyer and finalized the divorce. As for me, I switched from remote work to full-time and fully returned to work. I'll be single for a while, but I plan to look for a new relationship soon. Of course, my criteria for a partner is someone who's willing to share both household chores and child rearing.
My name is Harriet Simmons, a 32-year-old housewife with a part-time job. My husband Charles is 2 years older than me, and we have an almost 5-year-old daughter, Catherine. We are a family of 3. Charles works as a department head in the production management division of a clothing manufacturing company. After graduating college, I took a job as a customer service representative at a bank in the suburbs. Charles and I met through a mutual friend. Compared to my outgoing personality, Charles was a bit reserved. He was the kind of guy who made you want to protect him. We dated for a year before he proposed and we got married. Catherine was born the following year. My mother came from a place well known for its matriarchal society. I guess I inherited that trait from her, as I tend to take the lead in our household. Now that Catherine has started kindergarten, I work part-time at a local grocery store about 3 times a week. My parents handed over their house to me after they retired early and relocated to a second-hand villa near a ski resort. The house we as a family currently live in is the one they bestowed. My father, who began making pizza as a hobby, even opened up with a small pizza shop. It's located along the main road and is doing fairly well. My mother is renowned for her crepes made with the flour used for pizza. Their establishment has an unusual reputation as a cafe where you can enjoy homemade pizza or a pizza place where you can have delicious crepes. While my parents enjoy a tranquil retirement, my in-laws, who live about 30 minutes away by car, are quite a handful. My mother-in-law comes from a noble family and my father-in-law was adopted into the family through marriage. Naturally, my mother-in-law is a dominant figure, adoring Charles, my husband, and their heir. My husband is unmistakably a mama's boy, frequently visiting his childhood home. My mother-in-law has been persistently urging us to give her a grandson. When Catherine and I visit, she barely acknowledges her granddaughter, constantly pushing me to quickly give birth to a boy. Even when I take my daughter for a visit, she has to reintroduce herself. "Grandma, my name is Catherine. Haven't you remembered it yet?"
Oh, is that so? Well, either way, it's fine.
"That is why I hate you, Grandma."
She really has no charm at all. Who does she take after?
She would say, frowning in my direction. Because she's a child, she's just being honest. I never voiced it out loud, but I see it softly in my heart. Due to this, Catherine never warms up to her grandmother. Incidentally, as my father-in-law is practically a non-entity, Catherine seems to have no interest in him either. Our relationship with my in-laws was gradually becoming distant because it was always like this. On the other hand, Catherine is adored by my parents and she clings to them too, proclaiming,
"I love Grandpa's pizza and Grandma's crepes."
My mother-in-law still calls my husband my baby boy. And they're always talking together. My husband repeatedly says, "Mommy, mommy." Truly a mama's boy. It gives me the chills. When my mother-in-law sees my face, she says,
"Harriet, our family is prestigious. We need a male heir. A daughter won't do. Please give birth to a son quickly."
It's not easy to just give birth to a son, so I brush her off with all due respect, but then she would say,
"The grandchild of our neighbor is a boy. They must be so happy to have a good daughter-in-law,"
and sighs, implying as if I am at fault. I don't care if they're a noble family or a prestigious family, they are just so outdated. As my father-in-law was adopted into the family, he just nods in agreement without opposing my mother-in-law. I endured this lifestyle because I love Catherine. However, my husband would start saying, "If only Catherine was a boy," whenever the opportunity arose. When I asked, "Isn't a girl good enough?" he would reply, "That's because my mommy says." And then my mother-in-law, who heard our exchange from my husband, would always call,
"Why are you bullying my baby boy? Can't you cherish your husband even though you are his wife?"
I would retaliate against such remarks. "Oh, do you cherish my father-in-law? I haven't heard his voice for a while now."
"What did you say? You she-devil, if you bully my baby again, I won't let it go."
If I'm a devil, then you're a demon. You should stop being so attached to your child. I was now at war with my mother-in-law. Then one day, my husband approached me with a discussion. My parents want to go on a trip, so I want to help them out a bit." He requested to arrange about $1,000. Where do you think we have that kind of money?
You do know how much your salary is, don't you?
Well,
You understand, right? Even we want to go on a trip. I vented my usual frustrations on him.
but both my parents are old now. Their legs will get weak soon and they won't be able to travel. They say they want to go to places they want to while they can.
He's trying to appeal to my emotions by saying it's filial piety. I understand how you feel, but can't they manage with their own money?
After arranging various travel items, it seems they didn't have enough for the actual travel expenses.
It's their lack of planning that got them into this mess, just like you.
But Harriet, don't you feel bad for them?
Not at all. I'm not going to strain myself just to please them. Enough is enough.
But
There will be no buts or knees. I shut him down with a dad joke. Standing with my arms crossed, I towered over my husband who shrank in front of me. My daughter, Catherine, who had been watching the whole time, clapped her cute little hands, saying, "Mama, you're so cool." In the end, Charles, unable to arrange the money himself, shifted the responsibility to me and phoned my mother-in-law. "That useless wife of yours can't even do a little filial piety. She's not a real family member. Do something about it. She works part-time, doesn't she? She should have some savings. We don't have much time before the trip, so hurry up." Finally, unable to stand up to my scary mother-in-law, Charles quietly withdrew $1,000 from Catherine's account. When I found out, I was livid and stormed over to my in-laws' house. "Mother-in-law, I need to talk to you about the trip." "Oh, what's the matter all of a sudden? Don't play dumb. What do you mean by demanding travel money?" "Well, your husband willingly gave it as a part of filial piety, didn't he? What's wrong with that?" Right from the start, it was a total combat mode. He took it from our daughter's saving. You know, this isn't acceptable, right? "I couldn't care less. She's going to be married off anyway. Spending money on her is a waste." "What are you talking about? She is my precious child. Saving and spending money on our child is our responsibility." With a long-suffering expression, my mother-in-law retorted, "I can't believe we have such a woman as our daughter-in-law. She can't even bear an heir and is utterly useless at home. I didn't marry into your family. If you want an heir so badly, why don't you give birth to one?" With that, I stormed out of my in-laws' house. Anyway, I decided to make Charles repay that $1,000 from his pocket money. After their trip, my mother-in-law returned and summoned Charles and Catherine to their house. Though I was curious, my main concern was preparing for Catherine's 5th birthday. Planning a birthday party for a child this age is tricky. Who to invite? Obviously, I have to invite the children who invited Catherine to their parties. But there's a limit to how many people we can accommodate. Plus, what about food? And I still have to think about a present for Catherine. And our family party at night. My brain was at its limit. Oh, my brain needs sugar. I need to replenish the glucose. So I ate 3 of my favorite puddings and managed to devise a plan. Just as I was feeling a bit relieved, Charles and Catherine returned from my in-laws. But to my surprise, my usually lively daughter suddenly retreated to her room. When I asked Charles what happened, he responded,
"Nothing, really."
No, something's wrong. Our greetings at home were always high-spirited to match my enthusiastic daughter Catherine. It was our unspoken promise. This had never happened before. When I went to check on Catherine, she was sobbing. "What happened? Grandma told me that I am unwanted and shouldn't come home, so I had to stay outside all the time." What? I couldn't believe what had happened. "I was given a bottle of water, so I had to stay outside, even though it was really hot." "And where was your dad?" "Dad was inside eating watermelon with Grandma." What? I stormed out of the room and confronted Charles. "What's going on? Why did you leave Catherine outside in this heat? Aren't you ashamed as a father, as a human, to be comfortable while your child is suffering?" My anger erupted, but unusually, Charles was defiant.
"She was just noisy, so I made her stay outside. I made sure she stayed hydrated, so what's the problem?"
This is unacceptable. It's normal for kids to be a bit noisy. As I raised my voice even more, Charles tried to change the topic. Among our relatives' children, Catherine is the only noisy one. Maybe girls really aren't good. My mommy also said this. She wants a boy soon. What are you even talking about? It doesn't matter if we get a boy or a girl. Babies are a gift from above. Today, Charles seemed unusually authoritative. Influenced by his mother, perhaps? If you're going to act like this, I might consider divorce. You would go that far? My body started shaking with anger. I never knew he could be this kind of man. My mommy said divorce that devil of a wife soon and find a younger one. I'm starting to think she might be right. I see. I have thoughts of my own. But remember, Catherine's birthday is coming up. I want you to celebrate it properly. All right, let's both cool our heads and talk later. I realized unexpectedly how Charles and my in-laws truly think. I couldn't master the energy to cook dinner that day, so Catherine and I ate at a nearby diner. Charles said he was going back to his parents' place and drove off again. Later, he contacted me saying that he would be staying at his parents' place for a while and would return for Catherine's birthday. I lied to Catherine, saying, "Daddy went home because Grandma is sick." Catherine responded, as if she was trying to understand in her own way. I revealed everything that had happened to my parents. Put the happiness of your child first. If she's happy, then you will be happy, right? We are on your side, Harriet and Catherine. If you want, you can come here. No, we would be delighted to see our granddaughter every day. My father responded with a smile. My parents' house has plenty of space for us to move back in. Catherine's school is a bit far, but it should be fine. More than anything, the nature there is superb. Even if we end up separating, the word divorce floated in my head. Then came Catherine's birthday. I had informed Charles about the party and its starting time. We had planned to have a birthday party with Catherine's friends during the day and a family party at night. However, Charles did not return even when the scheduled time arrived. "Daddy is late, isn't he? What happened?" Catherine asked. Well, Daddy's busy, so he might be a bit late. I replied, even though I thought he was much too late. About an hour past the scheduled time, I found it peculiar and called Charles. "What's going on? Aren't you coming home yet?" "Oh, it's you. What's up at this hour?" He responded. "What do you mean, what's up? Today is Catherine's birthday. You said you would come. Catherine is waiting for you without touching her food." "Oh, right. I forgot about that." His response seemed a little tipsy and frivolous. "Right now, I'm in Australia with Mom. We're staying at a resort hotel and enjoying a luxurious vacation per her wish. We plan to be here for 3 weeks. By the way, the wine in Australia is surprisingly good." Wait, what? Australia? What are you thinking forgetting Catherine's birthday? Oh, who cares about that? I don't care. As if to cover for Charles's outrageous command, I heard my mother-in-law's voice. "Who's that? The demon wife? Just ignore her. We don't need the useless woman who can't give birth to a boy anymore." Charles took that as a cue and said, "I think the same. I'm considering a divorce and decided to have an extravagant family vacation. We're having a good time, so stop calling." Then he hung up. What just happened? With a bad feeling, I checked our joint bank account. What is this? The balance was zero. Almost 300,000 of savings had been withdrawn. He used this money to go to Australia with his parents? Shocked, I collapsed on the floor. Tears wouldn't stop flowing. Catherine, worried, came over and asked, "Mommy, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Isn't Daddy coming?" I'm sorry, sweetheart. Daddy won't be coming today." "He isn't, but it's okay because Mommy is here. Catherine loves Mommy the most," she said, hugging me. No, she was comforting me. I hugged Catherine as I cried. "Catherine, Mommy will always protect you." At that moment, something inside me broke. The next day, I took action. I went to the government office and gathered necessary documents. I decided to settle everything and move back to my parents' house. I swore to myself that I would shatter everything. I received a text from Charles accompanied by a photo of him and his mother in Australia saying, "The luxurious trip is fun. No souvenirs as a punishment. I'll call you when we get to the station, so come pick us up." His message seemed very assertive. Maybe he felt stronger with his mother. Who would bother picking them up? I moved my belongings to my parents' house and began to organize Charles's things. When I explained the situation to my friend at work, she sided with me. Amazingly, her husband works for a moving company and they agreed to transport the luggage. They said they would charge the cost to my in-laws and they could also keep their belongings, so I decided to leave it to them. Then my daughter and I went to my parents' house where we were kindly welcomed. Seeing my parents' face, I started to cry again. Eventually, the day of Charles's return approached. Just as I was beginning to settle down at my parents' house, I received a text from him. "I've arrived at the station. Please come pick us up." Of course, I ignored it. There were multiple calls and texts, but I let them all go unanswered. Eventually, he must have arrived at his parents' house. I received a call from the landline. Thinking it was about time, I answered the phone. "Why aren't you answering my calls despite the numerous attempts? Explain yourselves." "I'm done. I have lost all desire to continue being your wife. Let's get a divorce as you wished." "Wait, are you serious? Divorce? You mean divorce?" "Seems like that's what you and your precious mommy want." "What? Anyway, let's come down and talk this over when I get home." After the call ended with that exchange, the phone rang again immediately. "Hey, a truck from the moving company is at my parents' house and they're unloading tons of luggage. What's this all about?" "Oh, that's your stuff. I thought you'd be returning soon, so I had it delivered. Please make sure to pay for the delivery charge and storage fees. Packing was a lot of work, but I'll consider that a service." "Stop joking around. Calm down. I'm heading over there now." And then he hung up. My daughter and I ate my mother's homemade crepes and excitedly awaited the moment. Looking at the wall clock, just as I thought it was about time, the phone rang. "Hello?" "Hey, I just got home and there's nothing here." "Oh, doesn't it look nice and clean?" "No. What is this? I don't understand. Where are you? Is Catherine with you?" Charles, who had returned to our house, was stunned to see it completely empty. "Yes, Catherine is with me. Say hi to Daddy, sweetheart." "Hello? Catherine is having grandma's crepes." "Are you at your mother's house?" "Yes, that's right. We had pizza for lunch. It was yummy." After taking the phone back from Catherine, I said, "A lawyer will contact you about the divorce soon, so be prepared." "No, before that, what happened here? The house is gone and the place has turned into an empty lot." It seemed Charles was surprised about something else. "I sold it. The land fetched a decent price, but the house wasn't worth much. So I turned it into an empty lot. Yes, I wanted to settle everything cleanly, so I handled everything while they were on vacation." "What did you do with the money from selling the land? I had the right to receive some of it." "The land was inherited by me before we got married, so you don't have any rights to it. It's my personal asset." "So what will happen to Catherine?" Moving on to the question of custody. You have the nerve to ask that even after leaving your child alone like that? If I leave Catherine with you, her life will be at risk. I will have custody, you will need to pay child support, and also I will be requesting a fair distribution of assets. I can't believe you squandered our savings. I will claim that amount back. Let's discuss this with our lawyers." "What's going to happen to me?" he asked. "Who do you think you're asking that question?" I couldn't care less. Just like your beloved mother told you, go find a young woman to bear your heir." "We're not even divorced yet." "Tell that to my lawyer." Not wanting to deal with him anymore. "I want you to know I have no intention of reconciling with you. Now I'm going to start preparing dinner, so goodbye." I said and hung up. "Mom, you're so cool." Catherine clapped her hands. Then we started the divorce negotiations and I left everything to my lawyer. As expected, he brought his mother along. She insisted that everything was my fault and that her darling Charles was innocent. I discussed it thoroughly with my lawyer and I decided not to demand alimony, but I asked for a share of the assets, including the misappropriated amount and child support for Catherine. Charles was complaining, but when I threatened to take it to family court if we couldn't reach an argument, he reluctantly accepted. My ex-parents-in-law sold their house to pay off the settlement and child support, which I received in a lump sum. Once things had settled, Catherine started attending a new kindergarten and made new friends. She's growing up to be a strong and lively child nurtured by the rich nature around us. Thanks to my previous experience as a bank employee, I found work at a local agricultural cooperative. I have become good friends with local farmers and sometimes they give me vegetables. And then one day, some old friend from where we used to live visited and told me about Charles. Apparently, he is doing as his mother told him and is actively seeking a young woman to marry. He was persistently hitting on a young woman at his workplace, but his creepiness and insistence caused all the women there to despise him, and he ended up quitting his job. Now he's working as a part-time job at a construction company that's all men. It seems he's developed a fear of women. My ex-mother-in-law is still pushing her son to remarry for the sake of family continuity. But there can't be many women who would marry a part-timer with a fear of women. Their noble family is sure to die out. I bet she's still blaming everything on me, but I don't care. Meanwhile, I have started dating a man I met at work who's also divorced and has a child in the same kindergarten class as Catherine. We are both single parents and our relationship is progressing with a view to the future. I bought a used car. Australia is out of the question, but Catherine and I occasionally drive to the nearby mountains and rivers. Since coming here, I have seen her smile a lot more. I realize that my life is dedicated to protecting her smile. Thankfully, my parents are still healthy and working. Along with my new partner, we dream of selling homemade pizza, crepes, and ready-to-eat dishes made with fresh, pesticide-free vegetables produced by local farmers at a nearby roadside station. Today, Catherine and I drove our old car to the river. The sky we looked up to was blue. As I watched Catherine stack pebbles from the stream, I took a deep, calming breath.
Ugh, it's such a hassle to be called in like this. I had to be hospitalized for an injury and needed a guarantor signature, so I asked my eldest son's wife, Olivia, to help. But Olivia just keeps complaining. To begin with, she looks down on me because she knows I live on a $700 monthly pension. The wedding gift was just a cheap one, barely $1,000. It's unbelievable. Every time we meet, she has something to complain about, and it's getting on my nerves. I manage just fine on $700 a month, so why does she feel the need to belittle me like this? Isn't the thought that counts for a wedding gift? Being judged solely on the amount of money is just... I tried to avoid Olivia as much as possible because talking to her just put me in a bad mood. Then one day, Olivia told me she wanted to cut family ties. I'd really rather not have to take care of you in your old age, just because you're my husband's mother. She probably thinks I'll be in a bind if she cuts me off. Olivia grinned triumphantly. Would that actually be a bad thing? Huh? Ignoring Olivia's confusion, I decided to sever the family ties. A few months later, Olivia found out something shocking and came storming into my house. I am Marie, 68 years old. I live alone in Boston. My husband passed away 2 years ago due to a worsening chronic illness. Now my younger son and his wife live nearby and look out for me. My eldest son, John, works for a global company and is too busy to come home often. However, he always sends me flowers and gifts for my birthday and Mother's Day. The same kind-hearted John announced at 38 that he'd finally found someone he wanted to marry. We decided to have a family meeting at home, and John brought Olivia. She was incredibly cheerful, and the meeting ended on a positive note, leading to a smooth engagement. The wedding was scheduled for 6 months later to accommodate John's busy schedule, but I took the wedding gift to John's house as soon as they registered their marriage. Mother-in-law, thank you for coming today. Oh, don't mention it. I'm just here to give the wedding gift. Oh, I'm so excited. I give Olivia the dishware I bought as a wedding gift, beaming with joy. I wanted to give something tangible rather than just financial support. I figured they'd already have furniture, so after some thought, I settled on dishware. But the moment Olivia sees the wedding gift, she freezes. Wait, this is the wedding gift? Yes, it's a set of matching teacups. I thought they were cute. Is something wrong? I start to worry that maybe it's not to her taste. However, the response I get is completely unexpected. You're giving me this cheap stuff as a wedding gift? Cheap? Are you kidding me? A wedding gift should be around $10,000, right? I thought you were rich because you lived in a nice house. Was I wrong? Oh, Olivia! I'm taken aback by this sudden change in Olivia. Her gestures, her tone, everything is different. There's no trace of the polite and cheerful Olivia I met at the family meeting. How are you making a living right now, mother-in-law? I'm on a pension. How much is the pension? $700. Ugh, you really are broke. What a scam. Living in such a nice house and still being broke is just the worst. Olivia crosses her legs and sighs. Living on $700 a month? That's so pathetic. How are you even surviving? Olivia's mocking tone irks me. I manage just fine on $700, thank you. Well, that's great. Just don't come asking me for help when you're broke. Turns out, Olivia is the kind of person who changes her attitude based on income and assets. Feeling demeaned and upset, I decided to head home right away. For about a month since then, I've thought several times about telling John about Olivia's true character. But our schedules never aligned, and I haven't been able to share it with him. I've spent the days feeling quite uneasy. Standing at a traffic light, lost in thought, I'm suddenly hit by a speeding bicycle and fractured my arm. It wasn't a severe injury, but surgery and hospitalization were necessary. I was told I needed a cosigner for the hospital admission, and they asked me to contact a family member. As soon as I texted my sons, I received a call from John. Mom, are you okay? How's the injury? I'm fine for now. I've taken some painkillers. About the cosigner for the hospital, it's going to be tough for my brothers and me. We're sending Olivia instead. Olivia? Yeah, it's a weekday, and by the time we get off work, visiting hours would be over. Olivia doesn't work, so she can go. I see. To be honest, I really didn't want to see Olivia, but I couldn't afford to be picky. My middle son Michael and his wife Sophia are both teachers. They're busy not only working late, but also raising 2 kids. Even John sometimes gets home past 10 p.m. He's that swamped. I really couldn't impose on them. So I asked John, and we decided to have Olivia come. When Olivia arrived at the hospital, it was pretty clear she wasn't thrilled to be there. Being called out like this is just the worst. I'm sorry. Everyone else is working, you know. Just because I'm a homemaker doesn't mean I have free time, you know. I was prepared for some complaints, but her blatant attitude started to get under my skin. By the way, you can pay the hospital fees, right? Of course, I'll cover it myself. No need to worry. Fine. But don't pathetically ask for loans saying you're broke. From now on, the money John makes isn't just his, you know. She signs the papers with a smug smile and hands them to me. To begin with, I didn't want to deal with this hassle. I regret causing you trouble. I'll try to ask someone else in the future. You better. The thought of more caregiving or hospital stays is depressing. I really don't want the hassle of looking after you in your old age. Her rude behavior made me want to limit my interactions with Olivia as much as possible, and couldn't wait for her to leave. Why did I have to put up with such harsh words when I didn't even want to be hospitalized? It was hard to accept. Don't worry, Michael and Sophia are around, and I'll make preparations so I don't inconvenience anyone. I tried to act as normal as possible. I didn't want to stir the pot, especially in front of the nurses and other patients. Then go ahead and do as you please. Don't come crying to me when no one helps and you regret it later. I'll make sure it doesn't come to that. Good, because even if you play the "I'm the eldest son's daughter-in-law" card later, it won't help. So why don't you sever family ties right now? She probably thought that saying sever family ties would make me uncomfortable. But honestly, I wouldn't be bothered if I cut ties with Olivia. Worst comes to worst, I'll manage my later years even without my children's support. I'm okay with it. But what about you? Huh? Of course it's fine. Despite being taken aback by my unexpected response, Olivia nodded. She probably thinks I'll be in trouble without my kids' support because I'm poor and live alone. All right, let's sever family ties then. I won't contact you anymore and I'll delete your number. Do whatever you want. You're such an annoying old hag. Olivia, irritated by my laid-back attitude, stomped out with exaggerated, heavy footsteps. I had planned to help with the wedding expenses, but after seeing Olivia's attitude, I decided against it. There's no way I'm giving money to someone who talks about cutting off family ties. I swore to myself that I'd never rely on Olivia. Then I had my surgery and was discharged from the hospital a few weeks later. I continued with my rehab and carried on with my life. Even while hospitalized, I remembered how Olivia severed our family ties. I was determined never to depend on my children. So I didn't ask for help after I got out of the hospital. But on the day of my discharge, my second son and his wife came to help without a word. And it didn't stop there. They frequently assisted with groceries and other errands. Sophia, you're busy with work. You don't have to go out of your way. Isn't it inconvenient with just one arm? Don't hesitate to ask for help. I'm doing it because I want to. Sophia's kindness touched my heart. I found myself getting angry when comparing Sophia to Olivia. I haven't had any contact with Olivia since. I even thought about canceling my plans to attend her wedding and reached out to my son. I doubt we'll have any further involvement in each other's lives. 2 weeks after my discharge, I noticed something strange while being taken shopping. Sophia, do you hear that odd noise coming from the car? Yes, actually, the side mirror broke, and it's been making this weird sound. The car's a bit old, so it looks like I'll have to replace it. I'm really not sure what to do. That's tough. But you do need a car, right? You drive to work, don't you? Yes, but even a compact car is a considerable expense. Seeing Sophia struggle with this decision, I made a suggestion. Then let me buy it for you. What? I can't accept something that expensive. It's okay. You've been helping me out. By driving me around, consider it a thank you. But still, if you feel bad about it, how about you continue to take me shopping until my arm heals? Thinking it might be too much to ask, I was delighted when Sophia greeted the idea with a warm smile. Of course, let's keep going shopping together, even after your injury heals. Hearing her say that, a smile broke across my own face. So I ended up buying a new car for Sophia. Life settled into a peaceful rhythm, almost making me forget about the whole Olivia ordeal. especially with my younger son's family visiting and checking on me regularly. Several weeks later, my injury had improved significantly, to the point where I could carry light items again. That day, I didn't have any rehab appointments, so I was lounging at home watching TV when the doorbell suddenly rang. Checking the monitor, I saw Olivia standing there. What could she possibly want after declaring our family ties severed? Suspicious? I opened the door, and the moment she saw my face, she started shouting. What's the meaning of this? What's gotten into you? I can't think of anything I've done to deserve this anger. I saw Sophia, your son's wife, driving a brand new car the other day. And what's your point? Don't play dumb. That nice car is worth over $10,000. There's no way she could afford that on a teacher's salary with kids. When I asked her how she got the car, she said mother-in-law bought it for her. Well, yes. She mentioned her car was breaking down and needed replacing, so I gifted it to her. I don't see what's wrong with giving a car to my son's wife. You never give me anything, yet you spoil Sophia? You're truly a terrible person for showing such favoritism. If you can easily gift a car, why not contribute more to our wedding? Well, Sophia helps out with errands and chores around the house. You're the one who cut off ties, so why would I give you anything? You wanted to sever the relationship, didn't you, Olivia? Well, yes, but still. How can you afford a new car worth over $10,000? You're not that rich, are you? Who said I was poor? I inherited real estate from my husband, you know. Real estate? Olivia looked shocked. My husband was a salaried employee, but he had a decent income and had invested in real estate. He owned an apartment complex which I inherited after he passed away. I've been saving the rent money little by little each month. I get by just fine on my pension, but I like to travel every year, so I've been saving up. I'm not hurting for money, and if worst comes to worst, selling the property could net me several $100,000. Several $100,000? If you have that much money, you should have said something. Why should I? You're the one who misunderstood. I never said I was struggling financially or that I needed to borrow money. Stop lying. This is infuriating. I sighed at Olivia's childish tantrum. Why would I go out of my way to brag about my assets? That would be embarrassing. She's glaring at me, clearly not convinced. I wasn't deceiving you. Originally, I had thought about contributing money for the wedding, but then you said you wanted to cut ties with the family, so I changed my mind. Why? It's your son's wedding. Aren't you happy for him? I was happy for John's wedding, but I didn't want to give any money to you, Olivia. Why would you say that? If you have the money, then what's the problem in sharing some? Everyone's being so stingy, it's making me mad. Olivia started stomping her feet on the ground. Is a 30-year-old woman not embarrassed to act this way just because things aren't going her way? Why do you want so much money in the first place? What? Isn't it obvious? I want to have fun. And there are a lot of things I want to buy. John only gives me $2,000 a month, saying that's enough. $2,000 isn't enough for you? Of course not. Even a decent bag costs at least $5,000. I shook my head at Olivia's reckless spending. I truly wondered how John could have fallen for such a woman. Olivia's anger showed no sign of warning, and her complaints about John were endless. I even married John, thinking he had money. If I'd known he was this stingy, I would have never married him. Is John really that stingy? Absolutely he is. He only gives me an extra $500 on top of rent and living expenses. Even the gifts are capped at around $2,000. It's unbelievable. If he's making over $1 million a year, he should be giving me more. I thought once we were married, I could spend money however I wanted. So, you married him for his money? Well, duh. Why else would I willingly marry a guy pushing 40? It has to be for the money. At that moment, my anger boiled over. There's no way I could forgive someone for belittling my precious son like this. Just as I was about to yell at Olivia, John approached from behind her.
Let's get a divorce then.
What? John, what are you doing here?
I heard from Mom that she still won't attend our wedding because she wants to cut ties with you. So I came here to get the full story. Overheard you two arguing and decided to stick around. You had quite a lot to say, didn't you?
This isn't what it looks like. I mean... Olivia looked panicked, breaking into a cold sweat. I had no idea John was even here. Ignoring the flustered Olivia, I continued to speak. So you came all this way. How long have you been listening?
From the part where you were talking about how you could afford to buy a car despite being poor.
So you've heard most of the conversation. I've been labeled as poor, and someone who she won't take care of in my old age. That's why she wants to cut ties. No further explanation was given for not attending the wedding. John nodded, his expression stern.
I don't need any more explanations. I understand Olivia well enough now.
No, you've got it all wrong. This is a misunderstanding.
It's not a misunderstanding. I heard you clearly say you're in it for the money. I can't be with someone like that. Let's get a divorce.
Wait a minute. Now, of all times? I quit my job because we got married. Olivia desperately grabs onto John's arm, shaking it. But John shakes off her grip, shooting her a cold look.
That's not my problem. I hope you find a new job soon.
Don't be so heartless. I can't live without you. I have no place to go and no savings.
Why don't you sell your clothes and bags for cash? That should get you through a few days. Although I don't know who would rent an apartment to someone without a job.
Stop it. Don't say that. I even bragged about marrying you to my friends. How can I tell them there's no marriage now? It's too embarrassing, please.
That's all on you. Maybe you'll be the talk of the town for all the wrong reasons.
Olivia had never seen John so angry before. A man usually known for his calm demeanor. Her face turns pale as she begins to apologize profusely. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I won't talk like that again. I don't even need the money. Just don't divorce me. No matter how much she apologized, John's expression remained stern.
I can't even stand to look at you anymore. Leave right now.
No, please reconsider. Come on, please.
Just so you know, it's not only about the money. How could you tell someone's parents that you want to cut ties because you don't want to care for them? If I'd known you were such a cold person, I never would have married you in the first place.
At the sound of John's raised voice, Olivia starts to cry.
Don't ever show your face in front of me again.
No! Olivia starts crying, her face covered by her hands. But no one is there to console her. I felt a bit relieved that John understood her true nature, and I felt relieved that I no longer had to be deceived by such a nasty woman. John, realizing why I declined to attend the wedding, apologized and left. Realizing she's hit a dead end, Olivia gave me a piercing glare and walked away, clearly disappointed. Afterwards, I heard that John and Olivia got divorced, and she moved into an old apartment. Before their marriage, she apparently worked as a receptionist at a shopping mall, but was on the verge of getting fired due to her poor work attitude. It seems like she wanted to marry someone wealthy so she could quit her job quickly. Unable to find another job due to her lack of qualifications and skills, Olivia apparently started working nights. Olivia, now over 30, apparently isn't making as much money as she'd hoped. And I hear she's living a pretty frugal life while complaining all the way. On the other hand, it looks like John has found a new love interest. I was worried about how quickly he'd move on, but after meeting her, I found she's a genuinely calm and sincere person. She herself had been married, cheated on, and then divorced. That common history of divorce brought them together. It's funny how divorce can lead to new beginnings, but I feel more at ease with her. We work together and know each other's character well. John said this with a smile. I consider myself most fortunate to have married and met my children. So I hope John can find a loving family through marriage as well. But marriage isn't the only path to happiness. Some people are choosing not to marry these days, and there's no need to rush into it. If you meet someone wonderful and feel like you want to marry, then go for it. I hope John finds his way to a happy life from here on out.